The market streets of planet Euroth were full of noise and colors. Merchants shouted from their stalls, selling fruits, fabrics, and strange alien tools. Crowds moved like rivers, heads down, eyes forward. No one noticed the small figure lying. Near the trash pile at the edge of the street, she was just a girl, small and thin, her skin a soft shade of violet. Her dress was torn, her arms full of bruises. Dirt covered her body, and her eyes stayed shut. To everyone around, she was invisible. Like garbage, but not to him, a young human man named Cade walked slowly through the market. He had just arrived on this planet 2 days ago, working as a delivery tech. He didn't know the rules here. Didn't know who was powerful or who was trash. He just knew what he saw. And what he saw was a girl, barely breathing, thrown away. Like she didn't matter, Cade stopped walking. He looked around. Expecting someone to help her, no one did. Some looked away, others sneered. What happened to her? He asked the nearest vendor, an older alien man with green scales, hissed. "Don't touch that thing. She's nothing." Another vendor spat, "Trash blood." "She's trouble, human. Walk away if you're smart." But Cade didn't move. He stared at the girl, then slowly knelt beside her. Her lips were dry, her hands shaking, her fingers curled around a tiny broken necklace. "Hey," he whispered, his voice soft, "can you hear me?" No answer. She didn't even flinch. He gently reached under her to lift her up. Her body was too light, like she hadn't eaten in days. As he stood with her in his arms, angry voices rose behind him. "You'll regret this," someone shouted. "She's cursed. She's one of them." Cade didn't care. He turned and walked away. Faster and faster, holding her close. He felt her breath on his neck, shallow but still there. She was alive, but just barely. He took her to his small rented room in the worker district. It wasn't much, just one bed, a broken table, and a water filter, but it was clean and safe. He laid her on the bed and got to work. He cleaned her cuts, gave her water drop by drop. He warmed a soup pouch and fed her slowly, carefully. Still, she didn't open her eyes. But she was alive, and that was enough for now. Hours passed. Cade sat beside her, watching her breathe. The strange alien night glowed blue outside the window. And just when he started to drift to sleep, he heard a sound, a whisper, so soft he almost missed it. "Sira." His eyes opened wide. She had spoken. He leaned closer. "What did you say?" Her lips moved again. "Sira, my name." Her voice was weak, but full of something more, pain. Maybe hope, maybe both. Cade smiled. "Hi, Sira, I'm Cade. You're safe now, okay?" Her eyes opened just a little, showing glowing silver irises. Then she passed out again. But she had a name. She had a voice. And Cade knew then she was not garbage. Later that night, Cade stepped out to get more food packets. On his way back, he noticed a strange shadow near his door. Someone had been there, watching. But when he turned, the alley was empty. He felt a chill. Maybe those vendors were right. Maybe helping her was dangerous. But when he stepped back inside and saw her sleeping peacefully on his bed, he didn't regret it, not even for a second. She had been thrown away by this world, but he had picked her up. And now he would protect her, no matter the cost. Because Cade wasn't just a visitor anymore. He had found something worth staying for. Even if that something was a broken girl in the dirt. Sira woke up in a soft bed she didn't remember. Falling asleep, she didn't remember safety, warmth, or kindness, not for a long time. Her eyes opened slowly, her body aching, her head spinning. The ceiling above her was cracked, the light dim. But it wasn't the cold floor of the streets. She turned her head and saw him, the human. He was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, arms crossed, sleeping lightly. His face was calm, not cruel like others. His jacket was folded and placed under her head like a pillow. Why had he helped her? She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her ribs. A soft sound escaped her lips, and the human opened his eyes. He jumped up quickly and came to her side. "Hey, you're awake," he said, smiling gently. "You're safe, I promise." She looked at him with confusion, fear still in her eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you help me?" Cade sat beside her, careful not to touch. "I saw you there, and I just couldn't walk away," he said. "That's not who I am." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. "My name is Sierra," she said again, stronger this time. He nodded. "I'm Cade, glad to finally meet you." She looked down at her hands, bruised and thin. "You don't know what I am, do you?" Cade shook his head. "I don't care." That surprised her. Most cared too much. In the wrong way, they hated her for what she was, half-blood. Born from a forbidden mix of species, she was not pure enough to be one of them, and not strong enough to fight back. "I'm trash to them," she said, her voice hollow. "They think I'm filth." Cade leaned forward. "To me, you're a person that broke something inside her." Her lips trembled, and she cried without sound. Covering her face, he waited, letting her release years of silent pain. After a while, she looked up again, wiping her cheeks. "I didn't mean to cause you trouble," she whispered. "You didn't," Cade said firmly. "They're the problem. Achoo." She smiled just a little. That was new. Cade stood and walked to the table where he had placed some food packs. He warmed one and brought it over, handing it to her. Sierra hesitated, but her hunger won. She ate slowly, like she didn't believe it was real. As she ate, Cade noticed something. Under her hairline, a small metal piece, like a node, blinking faintly. "What's that?" he asked gently, pointing near her neck. Her eyes widened, and she quickly pulled her hair to hide it. "Don't touch it," she said sharply, voice shaking. Cade raised his hands. "Okay, I won't." She looked down, then whispered, "It's a control marker." He frowned. "A tracker." She nodded. "Yes, and more." Sierra didn't want to say it, but Cade waited. Finally, she continued. "They put it on people like me to watch, to punish, if I go where I'm not allowed. It shocks me if I try to run. It burns." Cade clenched his fists, anger rising in his chest. "That's horrible," he said. "We'll remove it." Sierra's eyes filled with fear. "No, they'll come for you if you do. They always find us. I don't care." He said, "No one should live in fear like that." Sierra looked at him like he was something strange. No one had ever said that before. Not for her. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked again, this time more serious. Cade paused, thinking, then spoke softly. "Because no one else did. Because I saw you and knew you deserved better." Silence fell between them, but it was a soft silence. Not heavy, not dangerous. Later that day, Sierra slowly stood and walked a few steps around the room. Cade stayed close, just in case she fell. She stopped by the small window and looked outside. The world kept moving, loud and careless. But in this small room, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, that night, as Cade locked the door and dimmed the lights. Sierra spoke again. "If they find me, they'll hurt you too." Cade looked at her and smiled. "Then let them try." "You're not alone anymore, Sierra." She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, she believed him. Cade couldn't sleep that night. He sat at the edge of the bed, watching Sierra breathe softly. Her body was still weak, but her spirit was stronger than he expected. She had survived so much, and yet she was still kind, still soft, still trying to protect others. He thought about the collar, the control marker under her skin. That small metal piece didn't just track her. It hurt her, owned her. Cade clenched his jaw. In his world, slavery was history. On this planet, it was hidden behind shiny tech and fake rules. But pain was pain, and control was still control. The next morning, Sierra woke up before him. She sat by the window, legs crossed, eyes distant. Cade walked over, stretching his arms. "Sleep okay?" She nodded without looking at him. He sat beside her, then pointed to her neck. "I want to understand what that thing really does." Sierra hesitated, then slowly pulled her hair aside. He saw the device clearly now. It was a dark silver band, fused into her skin just below the skull. Tiny wires glowed faint blue, pulsing like a heartbeat. "It listens," she said quietly. "It sends signals. If I say something they don't like, if I step somewhere forbidden, it shocks me." Cade frowned. "You mean? It punishes you automatically?" She nodded. "Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes they use it to make us obey us." He asked. Sierra looked away. "There are others, like me, half-bloods, hybrids, born in hiding. We are called stain-born. No rights, no families, just collars." Cade felt sick inside. "How do they put these on people?" Sierra answered, "At birth or when they find us, they say it keeps the peace. But it just keeps us silent." Cade stood and started pacing. He couldn't accept this. This planet had trade, law, and money, but behind that mask was cruelty. And now he understood why they told him to leave her. Sierra's eyes followed him. "You want to rip it off, don't you?" He stopped and looked at her. "Yes, but not yet," she said. "If you break it wrong, it sends a signal to the enforcers. They'll find us in minutes." Cade sat back down, thinking hard. There must be a way to disable it. He said, "There is," Sarah whispered, "but it's dangerous." She leaned forward and pointed to a part of the band. "There's a small core inside here," she said. "If it's removed without alerting the system, it dies. But the tool to do that, it's rare." Cade asked, "Where can we find it?" She replied, "Only black market medtech sellers have it." Cade nodded slowly. "Then we'll find one." Sierra stared at him, shocked. "You don't know what you're saying." "Cade," he smiled. "I know enough. I'm not letting anyone keep you in chains." Sierra felt warmth spread in her chest, something strange and heavy. No one had ever spoken for her before. People spoke at her, over her, or ignored her. But Cade. He looked her in the eyes, like she was real. That afternoon, Cade left to check the underground districts. Sierra stayed behind, hidden in the room. She locked the door and kept a small stun device near her hand. Even as she waited, her heart raced. With fear? What if he didn't come back? What if he gave her up to the enforcers for a reward? She had seen others pretend to help, only to betray. But hours later, the door opened and Cade walked in. Breathless but smiling, "I found someone," he said, pulling out a small toolkit wrapped in cloth. Sierra gasped. "Is that it?" He nodded. "Old tech, but it'll work." They waited for night. Cade cleaned the tools and studied the collar carefully. He didn't rush, didn't panic. And Sierra trusted him. Even as her hands shook, she sat still on the bed. Facing the wall, Cade sat behind her, fingers steady, breath calm, ready. He asked. Sierra whispered, "Yes." He began carefully. Using the scanner to read the signal codes, he found the main power line and paused. "This next part may hurt a little," he said. She nodded. "I've been hurt before." With one small twist and a sharp click, the signal went dark. The blue glow stopped pulsing. The collar lost power. Sarah gasped, then fell forward, breathing hard. "It's off," she said. Tears falling. "It's really off." Cade held the broken piece in his hand. Tiny sparks fizzled, then faded. He had done it. But outside the window, something moved in the shadows. A figure stood still, watching, unseen by both of them. And far across the city, a silent alert flashed on a hidden screen. The collar was dead, and someone wanted it back. Cade locked the broken collar inside a metal box and shoved it deep under the floorboard. He covered it with old blankets and dust, just in case. Sierra watched him from the bed, still holding her neck where the device had once been. It was gone now. But the feeling like cold fingers around her throat still lingered. She was free, but freedom on Uroth came with danger. Someone's watching, she said suddenly, voice sharp. Cade turned. Where? She pointed to the narrow window. Since last night, I felt it. He stepped closer and peeked out. The street looked empty. But two empty shadows didn't move, even when the breeze did, and one figure stood at the corner. Still like stone, Cade pulled the curtain. You're right, we have to move. Sierra grabbed her boots, wincing as she stood. Her legs were still weak, but her eyes were alert. Once they know the collar is broken, they'll send someone, she said. Not just enforcers, collectors? Cade asked. She nodded. They don't ask, they don't speak, they erase. Cade packed food, tools, and water into a small bag. He helped Sierra into a warm coat, hiding her face with a hood. They left the room quietly, locking the door behind them, but they both knew they wouldn't come back. The streets were darker than usual. Many shops had closed early. Lights dimmed like the city knew something was about to happen. They slipped into an alley and moved fast. Sierra led the way, guiding him through back paths and broken stairwells. Used to live down here, she said, years ago with others like me. They called it the Ash Zone. It smelled like rust and wet metal. Broken robots lay in piles, their eyes long dead. Walls were covered with spray markings and warnings. Outcasts, only no clean blood allowed. Trust no one. Cade gritted his teeth. This was where people like Sierra were pushed out. Of sight, out of mind, he tightened his grip on her hand. You're not going back there. She looked at him and nodded, but her eyes were full of ghosts. They stopped to catch their breath behind an old power unit. Cade checked the scanner he had borrowed. It blinked motion detected. Footsteps were behind them. Silent but steady. There. Here, Sierra whispered. She pressed her back against the wall. Eyes wide, Cade pulled out a small shock pistol. Barely charged, but better than nothing. From the alley's entrance, a figure stepped into the light. Not an enforcer, not even a normal soldier. This one wore black armor without symbols. No face, no sound. A collector. Cade stood in front of Sierra. Blocking her with his body, the collector didn't speak, just raised a long metal rod. Cade fired first, but the shot bounced off the armor. The collector walked forward without flinching. Sierra grabbed a pipe from the ground and threw it with all her strength. It hit the figure's head and caused it to stumble just enough. Cade tackled the collector, yelling, "Run, Sierra!" She froze. "No, I won't leave you. Go." He shouted again. The collector slammed him to the wall. Metal fingers digging into his shoulder. Sierra turned and ran, tears streaming down her face. But she didn't go far. Just around the corner, she found an old panel and smashed the emergency lock. The door opened and she ran back. Cade was pinned, choking. The collector lifting him by the neck. Sierra pressed a button on the panel. Gas burst from the ceiling, thick and burning. The collector hissed and dropped Cade. Stepping back, blinded, she pulled Cade into the emergency hatch. The door ceiling shut behind them. They both fell to the ground. Coughing, breathless, but alive. "You came back," Cade whispered. "I told you I wouldn't leave you." Sierra said, voice shaking. "No one gets to erase you," in the silence that followed. They could hear boots stomping outside. The collector had called for others. This wasn't over, not yet. They were being hunted now, but this time, they weren't just running to hide. They were running to fight back. The tunnels under Uroth were dark and full of old whispers. They twisted like the roots of a dying tree, some leading to forgotten places, others to danger. Cade and Sierra ran through the narrow paths, their feet splashing in cold water. Behind them, echoing footsteps followed, slow, steady, and unrelenting. "They don't stop," Cade muttered. "They don't even breathe," Sierra nodded. Wiping sweat from her forehead, collectors never sleep. They track without sound, without rest. They're not just hunters, they're machines with orders. Cade adjusted the small bag on his shoulder, feeling the weight of the stolen toolkit. "We need to get to the surface," he said. Sierra shook her head. "No, not yet. They'll expect us there." She took a sharp turn through a broken maintenance door. Inside was an old tunnel cart, rusty but still on the rails. Sierra jumped into the driver's seat, pulling open a panel. Cade blinked. "You know how to drive this thing?" She smirked. "I used to steal rides when I was a kid." Cade grinned and climbed in beside her. She crossed two wires and the old machine rumbled to life. Lights blinked on and the cart lurched forward down the tracks. The wind hit their faces. As they sped through the tunnel, walls passed in a blur, and for a moment it felt like freedom. Sierra leaned back and closed her eyes for just 1 second. "I used to dream of riding away like this forever," she whispered. Cade glanced at her. "Why didn't you?" "Because I had nowhere to go," she replied, voice soft. "Now I have a reason." But peace didn't last. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed behind them. Sierra turned her head, eyes wide. A second cart was coming fast, and it wasn't old or rusty. "They found us," she said, pulling the lever harder. Their speed increased. But the chase had truly begun. Cade searched the bag and found a small EMP grenade. "I have one shot," he said, "but we need to get them close." Sierra nodded. "Hold on tight." She steered the cart into a side tunnel, one she remembered from long ago. It curved sharply, the walls too tight for speed. Their own cart screeched and shook, but the sleek collector cart followed without slowing. Cade held the grenade tightly, waiting. 20 meters, 15, 10. Now he threw the grenade. It hit the wall and exploded in a burst of light. Electric sparks filled the air. The enemy cart jerked and crashed into the tunnel wall with a deafening slam. Cade and Sierra flew out the other side, the cart limping but still running. She looked over at him, breathless. "That won't stop them for long." He nodded, "But it bought us time." They reached an exit hatch and climbed out into an abandoned warehouse. Rusty beams stretched above them. Broken crates scattered across the floor. Sarah collapsed onto a crate, breathing hard. Cade sat beside her, wiping grime from his face. "Where now?" he asked. She looked around slowly, thinking. "There's a place," she said. "A safe zone for people like me. It's far, outside the city, hidden in the dust plains." Cade stood, stretching his sore legs. "Then, that's where we go." But Sierra hesitated. She touched her neck where the collar once sat. "They'll keep coming, won't they? They won't stop until I'm back in chains or gone." Cade looked her in the eyes, serious now. "Then we don't run forever," he said. "We fight." She stared at him, unsure. "I'm not a warrior," she said. "I'm just a survivor." Cade shook his head. "You're more than that. You live through pain, hatred, silence, and still chose kindness. That's stronger than any weapon." Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she stood and nodded. "Then let's find this safe place and make sure no one else ends up with a collar like mine." They stepped outside the warehouse and into the dying light of the alien sky. The dust plains stretched before them, endless and harsh, but Sierra didn't look afraid anymore, and Cade walked beside her, ready for whatever came next. Behind them, deep in the shadows of the city, more red lights blinked on. More collectors were coming, but this time, their prey wasn't just running. They were heading toward hope together. The dust plains were wide and silent, no walls, no buildings. Just wind and old bones of machines half buried in the sand. Sira and Cade walked side by side, their shadows long under the pale sun. The heat was heavy, but it was the silence that felt strange. After so much running, the quiet felt like a lie. Cade glanced at Sira, who walked with her hood low and hands tucked into her coat. She hadn't spoken much since they escaped the tunnels. Her steps were steady, but her eyes were far away. "Sira," he said softly, "what's really out there? You said there's a safe place, but you never said what it is." She stopped walking, then slowly sat down on a flat piece of metal sticking from the sand. Cade sat across from her, waiting. Sira took a deep breath. "There's something I never told you," she said. "Not because I didn't trust you. I just wasn't ready." Cade nodded. "Whatever it is, I'm listening." She looked up, her silver eyes shining in the sun. "I'm not just a stain-born hybrid," she said. "I'm the daughter of someone powerful." Cade frowned. "What do you mean?" "My mother was from the royal line of Elvari, one of the old bloods. They ruled long ago, before the Unification War. But she fell in love with someone. Not like her." Sira touched her chest. "My father was human." Cade blinked, surprised. "That makes you a secret," she said. "A threat. The union between their kinds was forbidden. They called it betrayal, called me a curse." She looked down at the sand, her voice shaking. "They killed my father, erased his name, and locked my mother away. I was smuggled out by an old nurse hidden among the trash. I grew up in back alleys, always running, always hiding." Cade sat in silence, heart heavy with the weight of her truth all this time. She wasn't just someone thrown away. She was born from love that was punished. "So the collar," he said slowly. "It wasn't just control. It was to silence your bloodline." She nodded. "Yes. I'm proof that their system is broken, that they fear change." Cade stood up and paced. "Then this isn't just about saving you anymore," he said. "If the people knew who you were, what they did to your family, they would destroy me," she finished for him. "Or maybe they'd listen." Her voice was uncertain, but inside her, a tiny fire had started to burn. For the first time, she thought about what if the truth could break the chains. "We're close," she said, pointing toward a far ridge. "Beyond that hill is the sanctuary." Cade helped her up, and together they walked again. The sky darkened as clouds rolled in, and wind picked up, throwing sand across the path. But they didn't stop. As they reached the top of the hill, a deep valley opened below. Hidden among sharp rocks and dry trees was a small village built into the land itself. Camouflaged, quiet, alive. Lights flickered softly in windows. Alien children ran across the dusty paths. Adults sat in groups, talking low and watching the horizon. As Cade and Sira walked down the slope, one of the guards saw her and dropped his weapon. "Sira," he whispered in shock. Others turned quickly, gasps rising. An older woman stepped forward, her skin patterned like old stone. She walked with a cane, but her eyes were sharp. "Sira Elvari," she said with a slow breath, "we thought you were dead." "I almost was," Sira answered, "but someone saved me." She turned to Cade, who stood quietly beside her. The crowd followed her gaze, eyes softening as they looked at the human. No hatred, no fear, just surprise and curiosity. Sira spoke clearly. "This is Cade. He pulled me from the dirt when no one else would. He broke my chains, and I trust him." The elder nodded. "Then he's welcome here." That night, they sat around a fire in the center of the village. Sira told her full story for the first time, without fear, about the collar. The pain, the hiding, the chase, and the truth of who she was. The villagers listened in silence. Then, one by one, they placed their hands over their hearts and bowed. Their heads, she was one of them, and more. Later, when the stars lit the dark sky, Cade sat beside her outside their small shelter. "You were always more than you believed," he said. Sira smiled faintly. "I just needed someone to see it." They didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but now they weren't alone. The truth was out, and the world, ready or not, would hear it soon. The morning sun rose red over the rocks. Warm winds swept across the quiet valley as the village slowly came to life. Sira stood on a small stone platform, dressed in clean robes for the first time in years. Her long violet hair was brushed, her face clear, her eyes full of fire. Cade stood beside her, adjusting the old translator clip to his ear. He looked nervous, but steady. Today was the day. They weren't hiding anymore. Today, they would go back to the city. "You don't have to do this," Sira whispered. Cade looked at her and smiled. "Yes, I do. You deserve to be heard." Behind them, a small group of villagers prepared supplies. A few of them were stain-born like Sira. Others were outcasts. Some were even full-bloods who no longer believed the old laws. Together, they would be her voice witnesses to the truth. The plan was risky. They would march to the center of Uroth, to the high seat, the place where laws were spoken and justice was claimed, but also the place where lies lived behind golden walls. As they crossed the plains again, people began to notice. Merchants paused, guards watched, whispers grew louder. A human and an outlawed alien girl walking side by side with no fear. It had never happened before. The crowd followed, drawn by the sight, by the story they had only heard in bits and pieces. A human who had lifted an alien girl from the dirt. A girl who once wore a collar. Now standing tall, when they reached the high seat, the guards stepped forward. "You have no place here," one of them said. "This area is for the clean-blooded." Another added. Cade stepped ahead of Sira, raising his voice. "She does have a place," he said, loud and clear. "She has blood as noble as any of you, and a soul 10 times stronger. Who are you to speak?" The lead guard barked. "I'm a human," Cade said, "and I speak because no one else dared to." The gates opened slowly as the city officials came out. Their faces tight with fake calm, their robes golden and heavy. One of them looked at Sira with cold eyes. "You were supposed to vanish." "I lived," Sira replied, her voice sharp like a blade. "I remember what you did to my family. I remember the chains." She pulled out the broken collar from her bag and raised it high. "This is what you fear," she shouted. "This is what you had, your control, your cruelty." The crowd grew silent. Every eye was on her. No one moved, not even the guards. Sira continued. "I was treated like garbage because of who I am, but I am not garbage. I am Sarah Elvery, daughter of a forgotten queen, and I'm done hiding." One of the officials whispered to another, "Shut her down." But before they could act, Cade stepped forward again. "If you hurt her," he said, "you'll answer to me." On every outcast watching, more voices rose from the crowd. "She's one of us. We know her story. She speaks the truth." The guards hesitated, and in that moment, something shifted. One by one, Stainborns in the crowd removed their hoods. Outcasts stood taller. Mothers pushed their children forward to see the girl who had returned. Sira's truth was out, and no one could silence it now. An old man in the crowd called out, "What do you want?" Sira looked around, her voice steady and strong. "I want no more collars, no more chains. No more children left in the dirt." The people clapped slowly at first, then faster. The sound rolled through the streets like thunder. The officials stepped back, overwhelmed by the wave of support. Later, the high seat announced a review of all control systems. The collars were to be removed from the Stainborn. An open council was promised, where all voices could speak, including hers. That night, in a quiet room above the city, Sira sat beside Cade. They looked out the window at the stars. "You didn't have to come this far for me," she whispered. He smiled, but I did. She leaned against him, her voice soft. Thank you. For doing what no one else dared, Cade nodded. Sometimes. It only takes one person to stand up and others follow. You were the light. I just helped clear the dust so the world could see you shine, and far above them, in the dark sky of Uroth, a new star burned brighter than the rest, just like the girl who rose from the dirt and the human who dared to lift her.